Hey everybody, welcome back to The Collective. We have another fantastic show for you planned out today. Very excited. We got Clay returning once again. Always good to see you. And a new face, Jerick Fry. Can't wait to talk to you. It's going to be awesome. While I'm excited, y'all should be too. Like the show, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, do all that good stuff so you get your emails in the morning whenever we go live, which is, of course, every day. Now, if you have any thoughts, questions, comments, anything at all, by all means, put them up in the comment section and we will engage those throughout the day. It's still a little early. I don't think Winter Storm's up yet, but hopefully we'll get a comment from him soon enough. If there's any other thoughts or questions on this, we're going to be carrying on from what we talked about yesterday, which is, of course, what makes a man. I have another little intro, but before we get into that, let's meet our new face, Jerick. You want to give us 10, 15 seconds on who you are, where you come from, all that good stuff, and then we'll jump into the combo.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Jerick Fry, from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Generally, I wouldn't tell you exactly where I'm from because you wouldn't know. I did 9 years in the Marine Corps Infantry from 2005 to 2014. After getting out, I started a nonprofit organization called the Veteran Bushido Brotherhood. Father of 4 and JiuJitsu black belt.
Muted, of course. I was just going to say, dang, 4 that's a lot of kids. 2 is enough for me. 4 seems like a lot of work. double on top of double. Vanessa Chaos jumped in here, said good morning, everyone. Good to see you, Vanessa. Clay, why don't you give us a little intro as well, because it has been just a little while since you've been here, so hit us up.
Sure, yeah. So Clay Surratt, light infantry, Army. Recent guest on you guys' show. Love to be here. And yeah, just corporate management. Me and Jerick know each other through Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I'm just a measly little purple belt. He's black belt. And yeah, I'm just trying to stay in the veteran sphere and be positive on here. Go to war with Shaun.
I like it. Go to war with Shaun. That's not always a great idea, as he can end you from a different zip code. So
yeah, like 9 different zip codes.
Yeah, exactly. So today we're gonna get into what makes a man, and I have a little bit of an intro here. It is a poem, and it's also a very famous song, but I think that it is poignant as to what it is we're going to be talking about today. So, the song itself, Blowing in the Wind, and it goes like this. How many roads must a man walk down before you call him a man? How many seas must a white dove sail before she sleeps in the sand? Yes, and how many times must the cannonballs fly before they're forever banned? And the song carries on, but I think that the key thing that I want to touch on here is how many roads must a man walk down? I think it's such a great line, and it's such a great thought construct, because who knows? We have men here who have walked many roads and for many years. What are you guys' first thought when I come up with what makes a man? Clay, I'm going to come to you first. What do you think?
So first and foremost, I actually don't want to go to war with Shaun. So let's just make that clear. I think part of what makes a man is the man that can read poetry on a podcast. There's one.
Bam.
But yeah, I mean, it's tough. It's kind of a contentious issue, right? What makes a man these days? And I think for everybody, depending on how you grew up and where you're from, the ideal of what makes a man may be different. So I'm really kind of curious to see. Shaun probably has a lot to say. I've seen some of his posts on the socials. I didn't read them as well as I probably should now that we're here, but I'd be curious to see what these guys say. To me, there are a lot of things that it could mean to be a man. Going to your poem of how many roads must a man walk down. It could be 1, it could be 100. I guess it depends on the man. So I guess that's what we're here to hash out.
Absolutely. As the standard answer here on the collective, it depends.
Yeah.
Jerick, what are you thinking?
To be honest, I think it's just all based on the way you carry yourself and treat people. I think that 100% what really makes a man, to me, is the way that you're carrying yourself on each and every day through every walk of life, no matter the situation. and how you're actually affecting and treating other people. It doesn't matter what you actually do in your life if it doesn't have effect on other people, I think. And you know, the biggest thing is your small circle. And I always think of like throwing pebbles in a pond, right? So everything that I kind of relate to ends up being around that. So if I have a small pebble and I throw it in a pond, I cause big riptides. So the small effects that I have on the close circle around me really affects, you know, hundreds, possibly thousands of people. So if I can walk and act and take care of the people around me in my small circle, those people then can radiate that to their small circles around them, and we can have a greater effect on the world. And I really think that that's how, you know, that's what's important about being a man, to be honest.
First thoughts, Shaun?
Well, how many paths must a man walk? Well, all of them. But really, all of them is just one. Because if you walk 1,000, it's still the same path. They all might feel different or smell different or look different, but it's all just same one path. We're all on the path. If you're on the path, there's only one path. The path will take you where you need to be. Sometimes it'll take you in places that you don't want to be, but it's all the same path as long as you understand you're on the path. And I think to the guest's point that there's times where maybe we're not on the right path, or you know, if you're holding yourself correctly or accountable and you're looking to not influence others, but you're just trying to do your best and you're throwing that little pebble out into the pond, creating those ripples, well, I think there's tertiary effects to that. You know, what ripples we create will create ripples around us, but maybe those ripples aren't the right ripples for that person. And so, you know, maybe our path is creating other paths for people that are right or wrong for them, but that's not for us to decide. Our only decision is to walk our path of many paths that will hopefully lead us down the right path for not only ourselves, but for others.
That is a great thought. Clay, you got anything additional now that we've heard from everybody?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like with Jerick, he's basically saying that service and being there for others is part of being a man, and I think that's true. And then Shaun, it sounds like there's a certain sense of self-awareness that a man should have to know if he's on the right path in the first place. And both of those are really, really solid. And I think it's important for me anyway, because I don't think that everyone has the same concept of what it means to be a man. And I think a lot of it comes from the culture that I think we all come from, where a man could be a warrior, a man could be a hero, a man could be, you know, a lot of different things. And what do we see as a hero in my eyes? And what does Shaun see as a hero or a warrior in his eyes? And what does Jerick see? And I think there's truth to everyone's, as long as that ideal, if you think of heroes and warriors, they always do the moral and ethical thing, even in the hardest of circumstances. And I think all of us could probably collectively agree that that is what makes a man or warrior or a hero, is someone who is of service, is self-aware, but also chooses to do the hard thing, like walk 1,000 roads if he needs to. So, yeah.
I like that. Jerick, any additional points?
No, I mean, I think that everybody's on the same page, right? I think that, you know, it's all based on your moral steadiness, right? It's a steady walking path, whether it's hard or whether you think you're on the wrong path, or, you know, you get astray and let off of it. I think that it's the way that you carry yourself throughout your life.
Interesting. Consistency is a thing, right? I was thinking about this a second ago while you guys were talking, and there's a quote from Miyamoto Musashi. It's, you know, when you see the way broadly, you see the way in all things. And so I'm wondering what your guys' thoughts are on this in relation to, you know, what makes a man. You're talking about consistency and paths, and, you know, being on the right path versus the wrong path. And I'm wondering, do you think that it has more to do with gaining enough experience to be able to apply it in any situation. I don't have the exact words that I need in order to get this across, but at least from what I'm seeing is that there's a correlation, because when I was young, and I imagine when we're all young, we have really no idea what we're doing. We're kind of swinging in the dark, right? But as we grow older, we're able to apply more of that experience into other experiences as we go through life. So I'm wondering, do you think that it is just a culmination of experience that allows us to see this path or the way, or do you think there's actually like a right versus a wrong way? Jerick, I'm going to come back to you. What do you think?
I don't think that you know if it's the right or the wrong way until you're on it. A lot of times, things might feel right or look right, and then you get down a little ways and it's not correct. I think that, and I always try to teach people that every single thing that we do in our lives, every decision that we made, every failure that we've had should be stepping stones to get us to the final conclusion where we're supposed to be. Right. So if we look at a failure as a loss and we didn't learn from it, we didn't gain from it, it didn't propel us or give us the tools to get to where we want to go, that's a real failure. These are all gains where, like, I was telling a couple of people in careers, I was just having this conversation with somebody. Each career path that you jump on, if you don't like it or you get fired or whatever it is, you've learned something from that, or at least I hope you have, right? I hope you've learned something from that failure that should then propel you to that next step. So if you're using this on an individual path that you're taking, and you're gaining and gaining and gaining and gaining, once you finally find where you're supposed to be, you're going to have all the tools and you're going to have all the armor that you need to succeed at that.
I like that. Clay, any thoughts?
Yeah. How many roads must a man walk down? So if a man walks down 100 roads, but from road 1 to road 50, he didn't learn anything, he wasn't a different man, I would say that he's no closer to being a man than when he first started on road 1 of 100. So I think experience matters, but only in the sense that you gain something from that experience, that you Shaun kind of hit on a little bit, that when you're in the moment of the experience, you're aware enough to look for some kind of insight for yourself. So part of being a man, I would say, is learning your lessons, and failing is part of lessons. So learning how to fail is part of being a man. So yeah, that's my answer.
I like that. Shaun, thoughts?
A lot, but I'll stick to Miyamoto Musashi as the example. And he walked a single path. He wasn't trying to walk his path for others. But how many hundreds of years later are we learning from his path? How many hundreds of years later are we wiser for his solo journey? I've read a lot of Miyamoto Musashi. In fact, we're going over to Japan for 2 weeks after we're finished here in Malaysia, because I want to smell that air where Miyamoto walked. And so for me, it's always been a fascination, Miyamoto has been, and what he represents. And so I'm considering Jerick right now as a black belt. Clay is a purple, me is a purple, Chance is purple. And I think that within our lives, just on the BJJ mats alone, we are all pebbles being thrown out into that pond of students, as it were. But maybe the path that we're all on is many paths, or it's one path. But when you think of it, I mean, let me ask you guys right now, when you see the path, do you see a flat path in front of you, like a two-dimensional path, or do you see it as a three-dimensional element? So the path is here, but if we raise our understanding of what we are capable of and how we influence others, per se, then the path that we walk, if we intentionally walk it at a higher level or a higher frequency, or trying to do a higher calling, as it were, like here on the collective as an example, if we choose our words wisely, if we put out some wisdom out there that impacts someone else, then we're walking on a higher path of wisdom, passing on that life experience that we have to offer to others. So maybe the path isn't just two-dimensional. Maybe it has, and I know it's a bit of a quaint saying, but there's levels to the game, and I say it all the time, but maybe there's a level to the path that we walk as well as levels to the game. I hope that makes sense.
Interesting, Jerick. I'm coming back to you. What do you think on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. I think we're all given our mission, right? Like, I own a barbershop as well. I'm also an instructor and teacher at JiuJitsu and run fitness classes, right? So these are the paths that I'm given, right, that I'm supposed to be on. And I firmly believe that. But as a barber, right, I've influenced so many people because I've utilized that time that I have with them to try to positively influence them. I could have not, I could have absolutely made a decision not to tell somebody to do something, right? There was a Marine that had just recently gotten out, and he was in a weird life situation, and I viewed it as like heading down an incorrect path, making selfish decisions. And I encouraged him to make the jump that was uncomfortable to go do it. And, we kind of just walked through a situation where I was like, why? What are you losing? What are you gaining? Where is it at? Right. I didn't have to do that. I could have had a how is the weather football team conversation, empty, worthless, and then left him on his way. But utilizing my platform that I have, no matter what it is, no matter where, if you're a grocery store bagger, right, you can utilize the platform that you have to influence other people. And I think that goes right to what Shaun was saying is walking your path at a higher level.
I really like that. Clay, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it reminds me of I think it was like Willie Nelson. You gotta know when to hold them. You gotta know when to fold them, kind of deal. That I can't remember where, and somebody will probably know that's listening to this, but there's kind of a saying that your potential is just outside of your comfort zone. And part of awareness and being a man and knowing the three-dimensional next level, part of that is knowing when your ideal goal is whimsical and unrealistic, and when to chase just outside of your comfort zone. And obviously, to be a man and to be able to navigate your own path, it's to always seek just outside of your comfort zone, because that's where your potential is, but not too far that you get yourself in trouble and you're unrealistic. So kind of goes back to Shaun's three-dimensional aspect of what it means to have a path. But it's almost all text talk about getting off the path, and part of this awareness and being a man is realizing, even in a three-dimensional space, when you're kind of losing your way and you're not on the right path. And that should be intrinsic. It shouldn't take other people to tell you that. You should be able to notice, or I wouldn't say you should, but it's part of the task of being a man is identifying if you're straying off the path.
That's a interesting thought too. It's Kenny Rogers. You got to know when to
Kenny
hold them, know when
Rogers.
to fold them.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah.
Shaun, you got any thoughts on this?
I do. Jerick had said that when the young individual, or I say young, in my mind I saw him as maybe a bit younger, but when the individual was sitting in the chair, and the idea that he could have chosen to do the empty and worthless conversation about how the weather that's upcoming, and did you see that Billy just bought a new Mustang, and Did you hear about the football team down the street? And it's empty and worthless for that man to have that conversation, but it's also empty and worthless for Jerick to have that conversation. It is a two-way highway. We are always interoperating with everything around us. And so, you know, what I think it is the difference between playing it safe, where you don't have to do too much heavy lifting in the moment. But if you're really good at your job, and I think Jerick is, because if he's been in the game for a while, he knows how to play this game well. That's the vibe I'm getting from him. So it wouldn't have been too heavy of a lift, but you still got to make the decision to do a little bit of sweat in the moment. And the sweat's good for Jerick, and the sweat's good for the guy in the chair. So the empty and worthless moment is for both of them to either lose or both of them to either gain. And so the ripple-on effect of that, the tertiaries are that if you spend a little bit of sweat equity in that moment, both people gain, but then that dude who gets out of the chair with a tight haircut looking all rad, he saunters down the street, he's got a little bit of pep in his step, and he's giving someone, you know, the little nod, and then maybe he gets home and he's feeling a little bit better about things, and now he's on task. Now he's got a mission. And that mission was implanted in his brain as a seed. If Jerick's good at his job, and I think he is, if he's good, then that fella is at home now, or maybe he's wherever right now. And that's still bubbling away in the back of his little peanut. And one day it's going to sprout. If it didn't sprout right in that barber's chair, it's going to sprout eventually. So, you know, the effort that Jerick made is the right effort for both parties to gain, I believe.
Yeah. It brings up an interesting thought here in terms of it's almost like a bit of a soapbox, right? To be able to utilize your platform, as you were saying, Jerick, earlier, is you also don't want to inundate people, right? Because you know, you could be at the checkout counter, and the person that you're getting your groceries rung through could be like, yo, you know, how's it going, right? And it's very simple conversation, quick interaction, no stress, nothing needed beyond that. But it could also go too far where you're then just harping at somebody about the path that they're on. Be like, oh man, you could be, I guess, instilling judgment on a concept or on a particular item in someone's life that you have no context for. And so I'm wondering, because I'm picturing, you know, somebody at the checkout going like, "Deet, oh, another thing of ice cream bars, eh?" And like, just like, so you could make those comments, but it requires some sort of connection with that person to really understand where they're coming from. Otherwise, it's just it's like a judgment looking down your nose or making statements about stuff that you don't know. So I'm wondering where you guys see I guess the line on that, where there's a, you know, I'm sitting on a soapbox and I'm judging people around me versus I'm trying to impart wisdom to people within my circle, if that makes sense. Clay, I'm going to come to you first on this one. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think Jared in that moment, it sounded like he chose to lead and didn't choose to take the easy path of, you know, how's Mother Earth? You know, everybody can divert to, you know, how's the Earth today, guys? You know, it's like we can always bypass any deep or meaningful conversation by, you know, the Broncos or I don't know, Canada's, I guess it's hockey. I'm not really familiar with it, but it's choosing to lead in that moment because there's no soul in just telling someone about themselves. There's no service to others or building of community. It has no soul. There's no depth to that conversation. So choosing to maybe listen with intent and listen with the notion of wanting to help and to lead that person. Again, that's part of what it takes to be a man, right? It doesn't necessarily, it's not your choice if someone comes to you and you have what abilities they are seeking. You have what they are looking for in your leadership, and to not give it would be to not have any soul. So he chose to lead, and he led with some soul. That's what it takes to be a man, in my opinion.
I like it, Jerick.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I always focus on is trying to listen. Like Clay said, you have to be able to listen and not judge. And then, honestly, what I find is leading people to their own conclusion. Right? Like I'm not instilling my conclusion on you. Now, if something's wrong, I think in society now, it's a problem that everybody's afraid to offend people, right? There's this big offense cancel culture, and it kind of takes away the point of people correcting each other, right? If you see something's wrong, there's certain things that are just wrong, period, right? Everybody can agree that being a pedophile is wrong, right? So there should be zero line of it might be okay, it might be something else. No, it's wrong. No, we see it, and I think in society we've been driven to like kind of accept and ignore, even if we know in our heart it's wrong. But like in a situation of leading like that, is you listen, you hear, and then if you can smartly do it, I really like psychology books. I was a instructor at the infantry officer course. I was a leader in the Marine Corps, did 4 deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan. Through that leadership, I've discovered that like listening and then allowing somebody to make their own decision in the correct path, really leads to those valuable decisions that they make that actually change their life. Like this guy that I was talking to actually moved from our state, moved completely, went to a different state to Colorado and changed his entire life. He called me months later and was like, "Hey, thank you. I really appreciate it. I made the move. I made the decision to do it." So
I like that. I like that a lot, Shaun. Any thoughts?
Yeah, well, we kind of started off this little topic with you got to know when to hold them, you got to know when to fold them. It's the game, man. You got to know how to play your cards right. And guess how you learn how to play your cards right? You lose a lot of hands. You got to make a lot of mistakes. You got to learn from the mistakes. You got to learn to play a better game. You got to get good at poker. But before you get good at it, you got to lose a lot. You got to lose a lot in all of these little interactions when we were young. And as we get older and older and older, we're supposed to get better and better and better if you're paying attention to the game until you're kind of masterful at poker, as it were. And so how do you get a feedback loop on that? Well, if you're playing the game in a one-dimensional aspect or in a one-directional way, thinking that, in this moment I think I'm going to do this. Yeah, that was a good decision. Next time I'm going to do that. That was a good decision. If you're not getting any feedback loop like that call from Colorado to let you know that, hey man, I really appreciate what you did there. That was a good call. Thanks. Check mark. You played a good hand. You played a good game. You got a feedback loop on maybe I'm getting a little bit better at this. And I'm not saying it should embolden you to get all crazy and start handing out wild ideas in the ice cream lineup. But what it should do is reinforce the fact that you're on the right path. Not that you're the path, but you're on the right path, moving in the right direction. And year after year after year, you should be formulating that you're kind of calibrated in the right direction for giving this kind of advice as a leader of men. And so part of International Men's Day is the fact that the one of the central tenets of it is strong, competent leaders leading other men or leading boys to be better men. And so how do you do that? Well, if you're just if you're just throwing ideas out into the wind and never sort of pressure testing whether it was a good idea or not, well, I mean, that's a wild way to try to run your life. So how do we do that better? You maybe give some opinion, see if it plays out through a call from Colorado, or if you never get that call, you kind of got to wait a little while and think, I better check up on him, see how he's doing. And if you don't have the time to do that, then if it's kind of radio silence, then you can always bump up to one of your buddies and say, hey, I was talking to this guy the other day in the barber chair, or the other month, or the other year, and I never did hear back from him. This is kind of what I spun up. What do you think? you got to look to people that you trust, their opinion, who have the experience or the wisdom, the long game knowledge, to give you a little bit of feedback and say, man, you played that right, or hey man, that was real cool that you did that. Have you considered ... So there's many ways to get your feedback loop, but I think it's critical that we hold ourselves accountable on the two-way street of life, if that makes sense.
I really like that. It brings up a question in my mind, and I'm going to go back to the lyrics of this song. And in the next verse, it says, "How many years can a mountain exist before it's washed to sea?" And I think this kind of goes into what we're talking about here. Is that there's a general erosion of misconception, I guess I would say, in from my experience in life, is that as I get older, as I do more things wrong and learn from them, it kind of erodes the assumptions that I had early in life. So as I gain more knowledge, more wisdom, just doing this show every day, it erodes a little bit more of the assumptions based off the fact that I haven't done the things. And so this is what I want to get to is there's a lot of noise out in the world. There's a lot of people saying things that have very little experience in it or none at all. And to Jerick's point, you brought up cancel culture. That's, I think, the pinnacle of it all, right? Saying that you can't say X even though that person has no experience in it, right? Just, I don't like the way it sounds. Don't talk about it. And so I just wonder, do you think I'm in line with this thought that, as life progresses, we have to erode those kind of assumptions by doing the things, actually pressure testing them in life, making those mistakes, having it erode a little bit of our general assumptions on life, and then forming that, washing that mountain of assumptions to sea. Jerick, I'm going to come to you. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I when you guys are talking about that, all I think of is jujitsu, right? So with jujitsu, when you're learning to fight, the only way to learn is failing, especially at first. You go for a double leg and you get choked, and then you go for a double leg again and then you get choked. And then you're like, wow, I keep getting choked when I go for this double leg, right? So you stop doing that, and then you switch to something else, right? Now you're standing upright because you're like, I'm not going to shoot. Well, now you keep getting taken down, right? Now they keep shooting on you. And you're like, well, that doesn't work either, right? So, and that's like really the progress of first learning jujitsu, like the whole way up to blue belt is just learning not to fail. Like, what am I doing wrong? And how do I not do that anymore? And then progression through the rest of the belts is now learning your path. Where can I be effective? Like, what is my game? Because my game's different than all of yours, right? Like I'll do totally different things than everybody else, depending on my path, my body type, my strengths, my abilities, my mindset. So I can, easily relate that to life, right? When you're young and in your 20s, specifically in my 20s, we're dumb. Like, I don't know how else to put it. Like, young males burning with testosterone. Like, we make some rash, dumb decisions, and we'll spout out at the mouth a lot of times. And you will, act really boldly when you probably shouldn't. And something that I've learned, now that I'm 37, I feel like now I don't make those rash decisions. And all of those failures that I've had in my life, I've been able to stack up in those troubles that I've gotten myself into. I don't do that anymore. I will not make those rash, bad decisions. Now, do I still have failures? Yes, 100%. I do have failures. I have failures every day with my kids, right? Like, I have 4 kids. There's days that I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have said that, or like, I should have treated this differently, right? But I try to learn from that and not do it again. So I'm still making micro gains. That's back to jiu-jitsu. I'm sure Clay and everybody else will agree with this. When you start getting purple belt and brown belt, everybody gets frustrated. You plateau. We plateau. We're like, wow, I'm not getting any better. Like, I cannot grow anymore? Like, how could I ever get better? But it's hard to notice because our gains become smaller. They're incremental at that point. So I think with life, the same thing. Like, as you get older, you're not gonna have those giant, like, oh my gosh, there's a Kimura. Like, Kimura's changed my life, right? In jiu-jitsu. You're not gonna have these big eye-opening experiences. You're gonna have smaller ones that, like, oh, if I just don't use my thumbs, I have a stronger grip. If I place just a little bit lower on his hand, it works better. And I think that's the same applies with life, with business, with everything, is that those gains are tiny and small, but they stack up over time. And that's what makes us more experienced and able to make the better decisions and less bad decisions.
Clay, thoughts?
Yeah. So I think one of the early points is that failure, learning how to fail, learning from your lessons is part of being a man. And to Jerick's point, that I think it's hard to put it in a metaphor of say a person is carrying a backpack, and each time they fail, they either toss another stone in their backpack or they take one away and they toss it to the side of the path. If you fail and you don't learn your lesson from failing, you're just throwing more on your back. In a jiu-jitsu sense, you see it with like really athletic young blue belts, where when they're really strong, it takes them a long time to just really focus on using their technique because they're really strong, right? And it gets you out of a lot of situations. But ultimately, you always end up losing to the higher belt. I mean, no matter how strong you are, but how many of those lessons, how many of those times on the mat does it take them to be like, you know what? Maybe I should look at my failures a little bit more minutely. Maybe the older we get, each failure is more palpable, so we pay more attention, so that the next failure isn't a giant Kimura. it's maybe I should just move my elbow in, and be a little bit more intentional about when I fail and how I fail. So to Jerick's point, it seems that failure, if learned from, is how we manifest application or applying anything to our lives. When I was a substance abuse counselor a long time ago, the one thing that I noticed is that most people have the answers that they're looking for. They know what they need to do, but they just can't seem to get over the hump. And it occurred to me that hump is application. It's application of all the things that you already know, all of the lessons that you've already learned. How do you want to change? How do you want to get better? How do you want to be a man? You have to apply. You have to apply what you've learned. And if you can't do that, then you're going to be a blue belt for a really long time,
Yeah, absolutely. Shaun, thoughts?
Yeah, I'd like to go back to what I was mentioning with Miyamoto Musashi. He didn't know that he was going to impact the world the way he did. He was just out there walking his path and doing his thing and kicking that ass. And so, to what the fellas were saying, if you are struggling to learn a Kimura in the most efficient and effective manner in the shortest period of time, as it were, then perhaps the secret to life is to learn it for others rather than just focusing on yourself, learning it for you. Maybe if you're not learning the Kimura for Shaun, maybe if you're learning it for the students in the future that you don't even know you've got yet, maybe that's the way to approach things. As young men, I think probably I would have liked to have heard that from old Shaun. If old Shaun could have said, hey, young Shaun, don't even worry about you. Think about the people that you're going to impact in the future, your future students for 20, 30 years in the future that you're going to have. And so I think that maybe that's a little trick that someone can slip up their sleeve to maybe get right with the moment as a young man and understand the importance of the moment is the moment for others in the future.
I do really like that. There's there's a lot in that road we could go down, and I was thinking to myself that I was just recently teaching a class, and we had a guy he's been in maybe a dozen times, like he's brand new, and one of the questions he asked right away was just like, every time I seem to get into a position, it's gone already. Every time I think I have something, it's gone. All of the higher belts just they're already moving into something else. I don't know what should I be doing in order to prevent that from happening. And one of the things I told him was, well, first off, you got to relax. It's like if you're the issue right now is that you're under tension constantly. You're trying to physically hold someone down rather than using the principles of weight and base and all these things. And he was just like, well, how do you relax and fight at the same time? And I was like, well, that is the question, isn't it? Because it's a challenging mindset to get over, in that you have to relax in order to find and move those positions a lot easier. And Shaun, you told a story a while ago about one of your races where you saw a guy cut the path, right? Where no one else was there. It was the dark, and he just took that shortcut rather than making the full trip. And it's been kind of bubbling in my mind ever since, of just like, does a tree that falls in the woods, does it make a sound? That kind of concept of, if no one saw it, no one really cheated, but he saw it, and therefore he cheated. And this is a long, drawn-out explanation, and I've got a question here eventually, so stay with me. What I'm wondering is, in those moments when you see yourself cheat, or when you see yourself be super tense, or not being able to connect the dots of A plus B equals C, how do we develop, I guess, the cognizance of being able to understand that failure in that moment is not like life ending, right? It's not you're not just going to shoot for that double leg and get guillotined constantly unless you really work that double leg. This is a long explanation. I apologize for it. I'm postulating it in my brain as we go. How do we get through that failure point that makes us feel like we are less than, and utilize it as a skill set later on? If that makes sense, Clay? I'm coming to you first. What do you think?
Shaun kind of hit it, and it occurred to me while he was talking that if you look at your failure as consequential to either your future students or other people, it kind of like shortcuts what I was saying earlier of taking larger failures, and then over time you break them down into each failure now you pay more attention to, so it's more palpable and easier, and it prevents bigger failures in the future. That's a long road. That's a long road of learning. But if you immediately skip that and you're like, hey, I got Comord, say, we'll stay there. How can I approach this failure as though I want to prevent this from happening to others later? Well, now you pay more attention to the failure itself, and now you think about it, and now you contemplate, and now you're aware. And to your point, Chance, I think the problem or the issue would be not being self-examined in your failure, not being thoughtful in your failure, and not trying to see that these lessons, they affect more than just you. They could affect other people after you, and that service and that community to others, even in your acts, it helps apply these lessons in a more soulful way, I guess is the only way to put it, right? Because now I'm not learning lessons just for Clay and I and me. I'm learning lessons for Shaun and Jerick and Chance. And now I've put depth and soul and meaning in my life and in my failure. So if there's depth and there's meaning, then it's not going to be life ending. Why would it be? Because it's not the end of the world. It's actually just the beginning of a new world, to put it philosophically, right? The ego has died a little bit, and on the other side of that death is the birth of, say, a new perspective. And that's, that should be what we want in life, I think, is fresh new perspective. That's why Shaun is so well traveled, right? He gets to go and gets new, like he said, to smell the air of Miyamoto Musashi. That's a fresh, novel, spirit lifting thing. So yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Jerick, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with both of these guys. I really like how Clay put it together with Shaun, to be honest, and something that like is kind of implemented. Any failure, if you can take that failure of your own and just kind of broadcast it, and then teach people around you and serve people around you in your community how not to have that same failure, that then becomes a success. Because if you just dwell on it and hide your failure, why did I lose? Why did this happen to me? And you hide it because of your ego, doesn't allow you to then explain it and use this as a tool to affect others, because maybe it doesn't really affect you directly. Maybe it's too hard for you to grow from it, just if you're trying to accept it and grow from it on your own. But if you're utilizing that and you're teaching your students, or whoever you are, whoever you have contact with, that is a student, that is somebody you can lead. If you're utilizing that to teach them and you're kind of broadcasting it out there, one, it'll help you get over it. It helps you get over that failure, by just putting it out there. Two, you're preventing others from failing, which then is now a success. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Shaun, thoughts?
Yeah, I think the idea that I was trying to put across, and maybe not very well, the boys kind of cleaned it up for me a little bit so that I can maybe make a re-effort at it. I suppose you can look at the world around you as just your own little world, or you can look at it as you building out a bigger world, the future world, the world that you don't even see yet. The idea, again, going back to the pebble in the pond, creating the ripple. Well, is the ripple just tomorrow? Was it just like this afternoon? Did you throw a pebble in a pond, and by the end of the day you gave yourself a double thumbs up and think, yeah, you know what, I created ripples. But I think the ripples in time are eternal if you do it right. And so I think that we're all just creating a future world that we don't even understand, generations from now, as it were, rather than just by the end of the year. And so how do you do that? Well, I mean, there's many ways to do that. And topically right now at hand, what we're talking about, as Jerick was stating and playing off of Clay, is, you kind of got to own your failures. And dude, that sucks. It sucks to own your failures in front of the entire freaking world that you don't even know exists yet. And that's the key, I suppose, is playing it right. And if you're not playing it right, when you play it wrong, you got to own up to it, so that you can cast the future lesson, maybe a generation or two into the future, so that my sons don't make that mistake, or their sons don't make that mistake. As I've told my boys a number of times through their lives, they're now 18 and 20 years of age. I told them from a young age, I'm not trying to raise you, I'm trying to raise your sons. The lessons that I impart to you are the lessons that you have to impart to them. So when I'm passing on whatever minor wisdoms I'm passing on, they're the wisdom for your boys. That's what I'm trying to do. And so I think that if we all could just focus on the world that we don't understand that exists in our future, it's not a bad way to run your life in a more focused and positive manner.
I 100% agree. And I got a interesting comment here I want to put up from Vanessa. She says, I think incorporating humor into the failure is important as well. You have to laugh at yourself as long as you honestly have it at your best effort. A younger person witnessing you react with anger, I imagine there's probably more with that afterward. There we go. Doesn't do anyone any favors, as you can also be an example of how to react to honest mistakes. And this is great this is one of the things my training partner and I do quite often when we have a rough day on the mats or when we're not getting some concept is we usually break down into like a giggle fit kind of thing. So we're just laugh not only at ourselves but with each other about the issues, and I think that's a great thing. Do you guys find that humor helps you break that down? Clay, I'm going to come to you. What do you think?
I mean, anyone that spent any time in the infantry or in the service, I mean, how do you get through anything? It's kicking somebody over in the porta john or whatever. I mean, there are tons of, yes, I absolutely 100% agree with that. You know, in some of the worst times in Afghanistan or Iraq, you find that, you know, humor, whatever kind it is, dark or not, it just it's food for the heart and the soul and the mind. I mean, I know it often gets underspoken, you know, humor, ha ha ha, you know, laughs and giggles, but man, it honestly can get you and other people, humor and humility both can really change the dynamic of a really, really bad situation. Yeah.
Absolutely. Jerick, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I agree to a point, you know, and when we were in Sangin, we called IEDs tink tinks, right? Because you know, if you get your feet blown off, you get little fake feet and you tink tink around, right? So it was kind of a term that we, you know, be like, you don't want to get any tink tinks. So it did, you know, that adds the humor to it. I think that in the same, you know, just to be the devil's advocate kind of on it, is that you got to be careful not to laugh off, you know, certain situations. I think that one, you could affect the other people around you that are, you know, they don't think that you're taking yourself serious or taking the situation serious. And I think that can be negative at times. I, you know, I've dealt with that with my wife specifically, you know, with your spouse. If you laugh off a failure with your spouse, like that might go terribly wrong. Or maybe, you know, if you laugh off a failure with your children, they won't value the lesson in it. But you know, so it can absolutely be utilized to lighten a situation, but you got to be careful not to go too far down that, and then you're not taking anything serious. If that
I
makes
like
sense.
that. I like that. Sean, thoughts?
Yep, I'm with Jerick. In fact, as you were relaying that story, Chance, I thought, oh boy, I hope someone beats me to the punch on this one, because I'm not good with giggling off every mistake. Because you know what it is? You're playing the same hand the rest of your life, the losing hand. You've got two jacks. You keep putting down two jacks for the rest of your life. It's a one-dimensional play. And so you got to get better at the game. You got to learn timing. You got to learn strategy. You got to learn tactics. You got to learn it all. You've got to be multidimensional in life, not just a giggle fest every time a mistake is made. Otherwise, you're not learning anything. Your partner's not learning anything. Everyone that's observing it isn't learning anything. You've got to become more sophisticated at the game. And to Jerick's point, there's a time and a place for humor, and there's a time and a place where there shouldn't be humor. And how do you learn that timing? You got to make mistakes, but you're never going to make the mistake if you just keep playing a pair of jacks.
Yep, absolutely. The to explain, I guess, a little bit more in that, and I do want to touch on this because you're absolutely right. There is a line, and if you extend too far beyond it, you can actually drive people away from certain things. Absolutely, and I've used it in speaking before, where I've tried to make a joke, and it not only floundered, but it like offended people. The audience, I could see, really just immediately not want anything to do with me through the rest of the conversation, which then makes that so that they can't, or that they are not as open to anything else that I say. So you're absolutely, guys are 100% right. And I guess the question on this is that how do we find that? Not only through the mistakes, not only through doing it wrong and doing it right, but to pass that knowledge on without it coming across as, I guess, heavy-handed, like don't joke about anything, or you have to be absolutely serious in this moment. because certain people are going to have, there's a wavelength there, right? There's a bell curve when humor can work versus not. So I'm wondering what your guys' personal experiences on this in terms of developing and using that humor well. Let's put it that way. Jerick, I'm going to come to you first. What do you think?
I mean, I really believe that it is the failure thing, right? But then on the other side is just understanding the gravity of the situation and not making light of, extreme situations that you can learn from. If it's something that needs shrugged off and laughed, and then you can convert that or change that into a serious situation. I think that you can, but I'm more, just me personally, I'm more on the side of facing the problem, dealing with it, and learning from it. I have less of the humor side, just to be on it. Like me personally.
I like that. Well, I mean, it's nice to see that, be able to recognize what you can utilize. Absolutely. Clay, you got any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think the humor aspect is it's most important to know when to use it if the consequence and the lesson is learned. So you know, Private Joe almost became a tink tink, but he didn't. And in the moment after that, there's this somber, feeling and moment of, Joe that was about the last time we seen Joe, and we were all there, and it's heavy. If humor can be found in that moment, that's probably the time, right? The lesson was learned, maybe that's a bad example, but the lesson's learned. Everyone got the lesson. So now maybe we can bring some levity to the situation briefly, not continuously laugh about it, but briefly. But if the lesson hasn't been learned, if Joe just continually wants to try to become a tink tink and be ignorant, and he doesn't get it, I don't think there's time for any jokes. It's not time to joke now. It's there's a serious problem, and I can no longer put humor to this situation because there's something to learn, and the lessons and the consequences are still ahead of us in the future, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Shaun, thoughts?
Yeah, I think it comes down to not being sensitive to yourself, to the moment, to who you are supposed to be, which I've already stated. You're supposed to be freaking doing it better for the future, not for the now. And if you exist in the now, that's cool. We're all supposed to exist in the now. But if you aren't trying to learn in the now, that's a different thing than just existing in the now. And so I'm going to use you as the proxy, Chance. You and your partner always, kind of goofing off, laughing the giggle fest every single time. Every session's a giggle fest. Every time something goes wrong, it's giggles. Well, there's always someone watching. Always. And guess who's supposed to be watching the most? You. You're supposed to be watching yourself the most and understand yourself internally why you're giggling off the moment. And then are you considering, well, I'm just being a one-dimensional fool. And I'm not saying that you're a fool. I'm just stating categorically that these present moments that we have to be intentional and thoughtful so that we can learn how to do it better each time for the future. If we keep showing up year after year, giggling our way through life, people are watching, man. And there's going to be people who ain't down with it. There's going to be people who are going to leave that gym because they ain't into the giggle fests. And so we're playing our own selfish game where it's amusing to us and we don't care about what's going on externally or tertiary around our community, around our country, as it were, because we're kind of self-absorbed in our moment with the other dude in front of us where we're laughing off the entire world. And I'm not being mean-spirited. I'm just, again, using the moment as a proxy to explain that we have to do better as men to understand that we're always being watched because whether it's on the mats or the mats of life, as leaders, we're supposed to lead by example, and that doesn't mean one-dimensionally. I hope that kind of makes my point.
Yeah, absolutely. I It's funny too because my initial reaction to this is that I really want to defend myself. I'm not gonna, but I'm recognizing now that I have this feeling of like, well, I need to explain, and there's different things, and there's timing, and there's blah blah blah, and all that stuff. Doesn't really matter because to the point that you're making is that it is not, at least what I'm getting from it is that it doesn't matter whether or not I'm doing it in a particular state in a particular moment. The trick is that I need to be able to learn from that moment, which is what I'm doing right now. And I think that that is that's the key thing is that to defend the past. Oh, we lost Clay. To defend the past doesn't really change anything unless I'm learning from it to begin with. And I think that is the key in all of this, in everything that we've been talking about so far, in all of the roads that we have to walk down, and all the mountains that get eroded, all the things that we've covered so far today, is that really it is about not only accepting what has happened in the past, but utilizing it for the future, at least in my mind. Now, we are just a little bit over an hour now, so let's get some final thoughts on anything we've gone over. Anything else that left bubbling in the back of your head, Jerick? I'm going to start with you. Hopefully, Clay will come back, but we'll see what happens. Jerick?
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing. I mean, it kind of affirms what I was talking about initially in the initial like pretense of like being a man is walking that steady path, right? Like having that steady groundwork. You know, I don't know where you guys stand with faith, but like, you know, we got to build our church or build your life, build your morals on steady ground, on rock, right? So if I have my framework laid on rock and I continue to build it on rock, it will be successful. You will turn out in the positive way, right? But if it's built on sand and it's not firm ground, you will fail. So I think that like each and everything that we're doing has to be intentional. Like Shaun said, you know, my boys, if I do something wrong, you know, usually your peers, your people that are under you, do like 80% of what you do wrong and 20% of what you do right, to be honest. You know, it just is, you know, if you have privates, if you have anything. So if they see you, even if it was one time, do it the wrong way, that might have consequences forever. You know, you're going to have to probably do that 8 more times right before they pick it up the correct way that you want them to, how they should act. So really trying to, you know, stay steadfast with the way that you act and the way that you carry yourself and the way that you react to situations, I think is super, super important. As long as you're focused on that, like that, staying on the correct path, most of the time you're going to fail. That's fine. That's your learning point. But stay steadfast with every reaction and every way that you're doing things and every thought, and be thoughtful about it. Always moving forward. You'll be successful in the end.
Yeah. Foundations. I love it. Clay, are you with us? You got any final thoughts on anything else we've gone over so far today?
Oh no, it's sorry guys, it's a really bad storm here, so it's like it's really bad. But no, I took a little bit of notes. So you know what it takes to be a man. Some of it was community and service. Another is just kind of being aware of what path that you're on. I think Jerick was saying that. A big one was choosing to lead without judgment, without prejudgment, I would say. Moving forward, taking ownership of your failure, and honestly just being, you know, to me, you know, to end with my little bit is just being open to what other people have to say. That's part of being a man, right? Is being open to the wisdom and the knowledge and the way that other men want to share what they have with you and being open to it. But yeah, that's it.
Love it. Love it. Shaun, final thoughts?
Yeah, it's a great recap by Clay. Obviously, taking the homework notes, I'm digging it. So, but I want to go back to what Jerick was saying because I freaking nailed it. You knocked it out of the park there. I am so in line with what you just said, buddy. And the last thing I just want to state is this is not at Chance or to Chance. This is to anyone who is listening to the moment where we're kind of talking about a giggle fest per se, and it's only a proxy. It's just a reference point to make my point. and that is, the moment that someone kind of not challenges you, but throws something your way where maybe it feels like it stings a little bit, like that's not me, that's not me, I didn't do that. That's a good time to kind of like sit down, think deeply about, well, is it you? And if it is, okay, well, big freaking deal. Guess what? That's like an inch behind you now. Total rear view mirror. The moment that you learn the lesson, bam, you're into the future, man. You're punching forward into the goodness of the future. You've got the lesson that you didn't know an inch ago. Now you're an inch further ahead for the world. And so never sweat the details on whether it was a minor screw up or a major screw up or whatever. It's a total screw up if you don't do something about it. But the moment that you do, bam, now you're into the future.
Yeah. This is one of the things that I've learned throughout doing the collective throughout this year has been, not only acceptance of your failures, not only acceptance of your successes, but just acceptance of who you are in this moment right now. Good. Okay, now move forward. Rather than, for many years, I thought I accepted who I was, but I wasn't growing. I wasn't developing. I wasn't continually taking today's lessons and applying it to tomorrow. I was taking, lessons I learned when I was a teenager and trying to apply it to, being 30. So it didn't really apply, and I really like actually being used as the proxy throughout this whole concept of the collective, because it's made me better. It's made me better every day. But on top of that, there's lots of people out there that have similar experiences or similar challenges through their life that can learn directly from watching the progression through this year. So I really appreciate being used as a proxy, and I love the fact that we have a direct example on this. And the only really thing I have to add on to the rest of the conversation is, first off, thank you guys, because Clay and Jerick bringing the fire. Great conversation. This has been awesome chatting with you all. And I would say, learn from yesterday, build today. That way you can grow tomorrow. And you can do that with us every day here on the collective. We'll see y'all tomorrow. Chimo.
Chimo.